I'll just maybe quickly say Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading today from Canto 9, text 24. Maybe I can share my screen. Just a second. How do I share my screen? Do you guys see my screen? Okay, so we are. Am I at the right verse on the Bihari Prabhu? Canto 9, chapter 24, text 63 to 64. Bhoja Vrishniandaka Madhu Shurasena Dasharhakai Shlaghane Yehita Shasvat Kuru Sanjaya Pandubihi Snigdha Smitekshito Darer Vakyer Vikrama Lilaya Nrulokam Ramayam Asa Murtya Sarvangaram Yaya. We'll jump directly to translation in the interest of time. The translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Assisted by the descendants of Bhoja, Vrishni, Andaka, Madhu, Shurasena, Dasharha, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Pandu, Lord Krishna performed various activities. By his pleasing smiles, his affectionate behavior, his instructions, and his uncommon pastimes like raising Govardhan Hill, the Lord, appearing in his transcendental body, pleased all of human society. Purport. The words Nirulokam, Ramayam, Asa, Murtya, Sarvanga, Ramyaya are significant. Krishna is the original form. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is therefore described here by the word Murtya. The word Murti means form. Krishna or God is never impersonal. The impersonal feature is but a manifestation of his transcendental body. Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti. The Lord is Narakriti, exactly resembling the form of a human being, but his form is different from ours. Therefore, the word Sarvanga Ramyaya informs us that every part of his body is pleasing for everyone to see. Apart from his smiling face, every part of his body, his hands, his legs, his chest, is pleasing to the devotees who cannot at any time stop seeing the beautiful form of the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So again, the translation is assisted by the descendants of Bhoja, Vrishni, Andaka, Madhu, Shurasena, Dasharha, Kuru, Sanjaya, and Pandu, Lord Krishna performed various activities. By his pleasing smiles, his affectionate behavior, his instructions, and his uncommon pastimes, like raising Govardhan Hill, the Lord, appearing in his transcendental body, pleased all of human society. So we are basically now at chapter 24 of the 9th canto. And if you notice, the previous 4 chapters or so was a list of names, as many speakers have been addressing, a list of names of generations and generations of kings and families and sons and who married whom. And from them came so many sons, and this person married this person and had 2 more sons. And so the past 4 chapters especially has been having a lot of names. And what's interesting is now all these names that we've been hearing are finally leading to Krishna. Now, if you see, we are approaching the end of Canto 9, and finally, all the names are culminating in Krishna. So, as you guys know, Bhagavatam has 10 subject matters, right? It mainly deals with 10 topics: Atra Sarga Visargasya, Stanam Poshanam Utaya, Manvantarina Nukata, Nirodho Mukti Rashraya. That many acharyas explained that it's not that each canto represents one theme and one theme only. I mean, predominantly a canto would have one main topic, and there will be a secondary topic also that the canto jumps into. So it's always interesting to see why there are so many names, so many names and generations of devotees being described. And it happens also, I think, in third canto and other cantos also. There's like this list of names and generations of families described. And so we see that there's 10 topics to Bhagavatam, right? One of the topics is Uti, Utaya. Uti is like creative impulse. So we see how human society has this creative impulse, and we have a need to have a family and have children and expand and home and property and dynasties, and generations come and go. So this describes the creative impetus. And if you had a straight line, and you put a dot on that straight line would have like infinite number of dots, basically. You can't even count. And imagine if the line has no beginning and no end. And there's like, line itself is infinite. And think of the number of dots that are on the line. And that each dot represents our own life. So it's a humbling experience when we read these generations and generations of people that all these ultimately lead to Krishna, and one has to be aware of that. And by the way, feel free to keep yourself unmuted during this discussion. So I'll try to sort of make it interactive so that it's not like a monologue. And I know it's early in the morning and you guys might be sleepy. So yeah, if you prefer, keep yourself unmuted if you're not expecting any background sounds. And I'll try to ask some questions and just feel free to jump in. So yeah, we're discussing these generations of kings and dynasties. By the way, does anybody remember the name of this canto? So we're talking about liberation. That's the name of the canto. And the ultimate giver of liberation is Mukunda, Krishna, right? Mukunda means one who gives liberation. So this name of this canto is liberation, and this canto ends in Mukunda, descriptions of Mukunda or Krishna. So hence we see that all these names are finally culminating in Krishna, in Mukunda, because he's a giver of liberation, and that's the name of this canto. And we were discussing about how Bhagavatam has 10 topics, Atra Sarga Visargasya, Stanam Poshanam Utaya, Manvantari Shanu Katha, Nirodho Mukti Ashraya. Mukti is liberation. So the name of this canto is liberation. And did I get that right? The name of this canto is liberation, right? Anyway, so so all these names end in Krishna. And so we see that everything finally culminates in Krishna, or should culminate in Krishna. So now we are getting ready to enter 10th canto. We're just last few verses away from 10th canto, and it's getting really exciting now. So these dynasties, they show that everything is meant to sort of culminate in Krishna. And there's many, Bhagavatam also talks about how all the occupational duties that we're doing across generations and dynasties, it says, dharma svanushtita pumsa vishvaksena kathasuya na utpadayat yadi ratim shramahi eva kevalam. Na utpadayat. If all that we're doing, all the generations of kings and dynasties that come and go, na utpadayat, if they don't provoke rati, na utpadayat yadim rati shramahi eva kevalam, it's just a waste of time. So all these, it's kind of gives a nice perspective when we talk about so many generations, and finally it culminates in Krishna. Then we understand, like again it said that atapumbi dvijashishta varnashrama vibhagasaha swanushtitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam, that everything we do is ultimately meant for haritoshanam, meant to please Krishna. So in this way we see this canto is also ending in Krishna to remind us that everything is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's why we see in this chapter 24, text 57 onwards, now it's picking up gear, it's shifting into high gear. Until now there was a lot of generations, and the reader might be getting impatient. Although if you look from the right perspective, every verse of Bhagavatam is nectar. There's so much to squeeze out of the Bhagavatam. But 57 onwards is picking up high gear, like imagine you're on a plane, and plane is cruising at a high altitude, everybody's sleeping, the shades are on, the lights are dim, everybody's fast asleep in ignorance. And then the pilot announces, okay, we're now getting ready to land. We're in the airspace of such and such a city, and the stewardesses all become active, the lights come on, the shades come up, fast, straighten your tray tables, straighten your seat belts, and they come to take the trash, and you see the engine getting, the engine of the plane revving up, high gear, you hear all these sounds, and now you see the change in altitude, everybody's getting ready, okay, we're about to hit our destination, the clouds of ignorance part, and now you see the airspace, you see the airport, and then you finally see your destination. So now from text 57 onwards, you see the engine revving up, you see the sounds of the engine. We're now getting ready to land. 10th canto soon will come upon us. So it's exciting now. We're about to reach 10th canto, but it's fascinating that although 10th canto is the heart, it's the summum bonum, as Prabhupada names, it's the heart, it's the although like I said, every page of Bhagavatam is nectar, like Sridhar Swami explains, I believe in one of the first few verses of the first canto. He says that this Bhagavatam is like a juice with no seed and no skin. It's like a mango. It's all pulp. And not only is it a nice fruit, but it's mango, which is the king of all fruits. And not only is it mango, the king of all fruits, but it's like one of those nicely ripe, yellow, reddish mango, not like a green mango, although green mango is still a mango. But it's a nice, ripe, juicy mango with no seed and no skin. You can just drink it. You don't even need to chew it. You can just drink it. Pibata rasam Bhagavata rasamale. But Shukadeva Goswami doesn't directly jump into the 10th canto. He discusses the first 9 cantos. And in the preface of Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says that by the end of 9 cantos, one is meant to be self-realized, or at least freed from lust. And if you're not free from lust, go back and read the first 9 cantos again. Of course, as it says in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, that the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, they're meant to actually cure the hridroga, the lust disease of the heart. All of us have a heart disease, right? Not the heart disease of whatever, like diabetes. I mean, diabetes is not a heart disease, but all those heart conditions people have. So all of us actually, besides that, also have a heart disease, the hridroga of lust. So the first 9 canto is meant, in case you're wondering about these dynasties and all these different sections of the Bhagavatam, it's all meant to sort of purify us and get us ready for the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam starts in a really fascinating way of Parikshit Maharaj. The whole story, the whole book is basically a dialogue between Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami, the speaker. So going a little bit in the background of the Mahabharata, as we know, that when Parikshit Maharaj was in the womb of his mother, Uttara, Ashwatthama dispatched the dangerous nuclear weapon, the Brahmastra, because the story goes that towards the end of the Mahabharata war, Ashwatthama kills all of the sons of the Pandavas. The 5 Pandavas had 5 sons from different wives, and actually all of them were from Draupadi. Of course, they had other wives also. But Ashwatthama killed the last, all of the sons of Pandavas. Basically, the whole family lineage just stops with the Pandavas, and the Pandavas were to die. The whole lineage would stop, except for Arjuna's son, who's Abhimanyu, who was also killed in the battle. As you, those of you who know Mahabharata, he was killed in a really brutal, un-Kshatriya-like way. He was ambushed from all sides by all these big personalities like Bhishma, Drona, and all these. They were not only were they much older than Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu was just 16. He was a young, chivalrous fighter who was just 16. He was ambushed by all these big Maharathis, like Bhishma and Drona and Duryodhana and all these Karna, and each one of them were so powerful. And yet Abhimanyu brilliantly fought all of them, but in the end he couldn't survive being ambushed from all directions, and he died. But Abhimanyu's wife, Uttara, Abhimanyu's son, who's then later to be born as Parikshit, was in the womb of Uttara. So that was the last heir to the family. He was the last surviving the lineage of the Kurus. And Ashwatthama dispatched the Brahmastra weapon, which was going towards Uttara, and Uttara then goes running to Krishna saying, please protect my son, my child in the womb. And this is, if the child in the womb is destroyed, the whole lineage will stop, will end there. So then Krishna then enters the womb of Uttara, and then when Maharaj Parikshit is present in the womb, he sees this brilliant, dazzling figure when Krishna enters the womb, and he personally protects Parikshit. Parikshit is seeing this brilliant, dazzling figure. He's like, wow, this surely must be my Lord. And he sees Krishna face to face, and then Krishna protects Parikshit. And then years later, when Parikshit is born, he remembers this face. He remembers this face of Krishna, my Lord. And by the way, does anybody know what the name Parikshit means? So Parikshit, yeah, does anybody know? Okay. So the word Parikshit means the examiner, one who examines, Parikshan, or to examine. So he was named, Parikshit, because from that point onwards, the rest of his life, he was examining every single person to see, is this my Lord? Is this my Lord that I saw in the womb of my mother? Is this my Lord? So that's why he was named as Parikshit. Every person he met, he was looking, is this my Lord? And that we see is a qualification of someone who hears Bhagavatam. And that's why Sukadeva Goswami is speaking the 9 cantos, in case we are not there at that point where we are actively looking. Because this verse, as we see, is talking about the pastimes of the Lord. So there's a reason why we're talking about all of this. So please bear with me, in case you might think that, okay, this is a long tangent and we're digressing, but Shukadeva Goswami doesn't directly jump into the pastimes of Krishna. There's a reason why he's talking about the 9 cantos, and we hear from Parikshit Maharaj's own life about how he was eager, he was looking to see Krishna. So the interesting thing is, after 9 cantos, when we reach the 10th canto, Parikshit Maharaj finally gets to see Krishna. But how does he see? He doesn't see through the eyes. He's seeing through the ears, right? Yes, I see Andrea showing. So he sees through the ears. He doesn't see through the eyes. So it's important that before we try to see Krishna's pastimes, we must hear Krishna's pastimes. So hearing is the way to see. And coincidentally, if you see the previous verse, today we're reading text 63, 64, but the previous verse, text 62, I'll quickly read the verse, text 62. It says, simply by receiving the glories of the Lord through purified transcendental years, again, purified transcendental years, the devotees of the Lord are immediately freed from strong material desires and engagement in fruitive activities. So you see, this verse that we're reading should be understood from the context of the previous verse, text 62. Text 62 says that simply by receiving the glories through purified transcendental years, not just years, but purified transcendental years. So now we see why we are reading these dynasties of these generations. They talk about uti, or creative impetus. And then the verse says the devotees are immediately free from strong material desires and engagements in fruitive activities. So before we try to see the pastimes of Krishna, one must try to hear these pastimes. So this verse has to be understood from the context of the previous verse. So one must first try to hear before one tries to see. So hearing is a really, really important aspect. You see, that's why in Bhagavad Gita also, chapter 11, Krishna shows his universal form, right? So Krishna tells Arjuna that this universal form you cannot see with your eyes, and you have to have divine eyes for you to see it. And then Krishna shows his Vishvarupa, universal form, and Arjuna is blown away. But what's interesting is before chapter 11 is chapter 10, which is opulence of the absolute. And in chapter 10, Arjuna is asking Krishna that I wish to hear of your manifestation. I want to hear of your glories. Arjuna doesn't say, I want to just show me. Sometimes people say seeing is believing. Show me God, So Arjuna first says, I want to hear. And then Krishna says, okay. And then Krishna describes, I am this of the mountains, I'm Himalayas, among women, I'm fame, fortune, fine speech, things like that. I'm of the purifiers, I'm the wind, and so on. So Parikshit Maharaj first hears it, and then he desired, and then he sees Krishna. So that's the qualification that one has to first hear. So hearing is really, really important aspect of being able to see Krishna's pastimes. Even if you see, like those kids that are born deaf, they're often mute also, they cannot speak. There is a form of deafness that's incurable. Imagine if they spend their whole lives being deaf, they cannot speak. Other impediments, it only affects that senses. If you're paraplegic or whatever, if you're blind, if you're blind, it doesn't impact your sense of hearing. It doesn't impact other senses. If you're mute, if you have a speech impediment by birth, it doesn't impact your sense of seeing or hearing. But the sense of hearing, it says that if you're impaired, like by ear, then it affects your other senses also. Like you can speak. And if a person cannot speak and has never heard, they cannot even read. If you show them a text, how would they be able? They're most likely be illiterate. So even your sight is determined by what you hear. So hearing is really important. Like for example, even when we see, when we try to see something, our seeing is really impacted by what we hear. For example, if someone shows you like an X-ray film, right? Like, or a sonogram or one of those medical charts, films, X-ray films. And what would you, if you're not trained medically, what would you understand by looking at an X-ray film, right? Or sometimes you look at a film like, what am I looking? What is this? And the doctor or someone has to explain, this is the child, or this part of your lung is not infected. Or so we see by hearing properly. So when a person goes to med school or whatever, when they've heard from authorities, then they can see properly. Then you can understand what an X-ray film is, or what you're looking at. So your seeing is majorly determined by the quality of your hearing. So that's why this verse, we're talking about the pastimes of Krishna, lifting Govardhan hill and things like that. We have to first hear sufficiently to be able to understand and see these pastimes with your own eyes. So that's why this Bhagavatam says that, the second verse itself of the Bhagavatam, it says that Dharma projita kaitavotran parama nirmat saranam satam vedyam vastam atra vastu shivadam. That this Bhagavatam is a highest truth which distinguishes reality from illusion for the welfare of all. It distinguishes reality from illusion. Meaning by this Bhagavatam, you'll develop that vision by which you can see what is reality and what is illusion. So that is the beauty of this Bhagavatam. You'll develop that eyesight to be able to see things in proper perspective. But how do you see? Like we discussed, how do you see? We see because by hearing. So, and even, sorry about that sound, I live in a noisy neighborhood, but so this Bhagavatam gives you that vision by which you can distinguish reality from illusion. And even when we see, again, this is one of those questions, feel free to unmute. Yeah, Kevin, did you have anything to say? I see your hand raised.
Yeah, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
While you were saying how our hearing affects all of our other senses, since I'm driving, I was thinking, well, there's been times where I'm lost, and the first thing I do is turn the radio down just so I could figure out where I'm at or what I'm gonna do next.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a further testimonial to the importance of hearing. And yeah. Andrea, did you have something? Is that a raised hand?
Yeah,
yeah.
What you're just sharing also made me think. I actually have she's my cousin's daughter, and she was born deaf, and they now there's the technology where they could put like the cochlear implant, but they did that later on, and she has trouble, even though she's much older, she has trouble like speaking, like enunciating things and talking. And then she also, like you said, has trouble reading because it is all connected. So even though, there's the technology exists, which I guess we can think of like, if later on in life we've been deaf to Krishna, but then we start kind of bringing in that Vedic technology, for us to have compassion for ourselves of not being able to speak properly, not to be offensive and not all these things, because, we're kind of late into the game with that, as opposed to those who maybe were born in a Vaishnava family or have had that kind of association early on. They weren't, born deaf, so to say, to it or whatever. So yeah, a lot of what you're sharing has really resonated for me. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Just as some person who's late in the process of hearing, they have struggles. Even for us, like we started pretty late. And even when we see, right? So when we see through what faculty do we see? Can anybody share their thoughts? What are we using? What faculty are we using to see? The eyes, you can see the eyes. Can you explain?
The phone.
Huh?
The phone.
The phone. Yeah, all these faculties.
This is our faculty.
Yeah, all these are faculties to see, right? But actually, if you see, what you see is not through your eyes. You're seeing through your consciousness. It's not through the eyes that you're seeing. Because sometimes you can walk through the most busiest streets and your mind is somewhere else. You might pass by a store and you completely missed it. Or you're sitting in a temple room, your mind is picking up a storm of emotions, and someone walks in, you don't even notice they're there. Has that happened to anybody here? That you're seeing something, but you missed it. You don't see it.
Yeah, you can come to the temple and open your Facebook and you're not in the temple anymore. You're in the rabbit hole.
So yes, the eyes help us, but what we're seeing through is our consciousness. It's the consciousness through which you see, like what Kevin was mentioning. And that consciousness is purified and shaped by the hearing process. So if you hear, you can see properly. So that's why it's not just through the eyes that we are seeing. We are seeing through our consciousness, which is shaped by our ears. So you see through the ears. That's why there's a beautiful verse. Maybe I can share my screen. There's a beautiful verse in Bhagavatam, which talks about the importance of hearing. It says, Tvam bhakti yoga paribhavita hrit saroja. Ase shrutekshita patho nanunata pumsam. The first two lines are beautiful. Shrutekshita patho. And this is really commonly quoted verse. Shrutekshita patho. And I'll read the translation. Oh my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing. And thus their hearts become cleansed and you take your seat there. So devotees can see you by the process of hearing. It's called Shrute Ikshita Pata. And if you see Shrute Ikshita, it's basically the word is Shruta and Ikshita. So Ikshita basically means eyes. You'll see this word Ikshita, Aksha come a lot in different words, like Aksha, Ikshita, like Shastra, Chakshus. Chakshus is like, again, Aksha, which means the eyes. Or we say that in the Bhagavad Gita, it said that Pratyaksha Gogumam Dharmam Susukam Pratyaksha Gogumam Dharmam Aksha. Again, the word Aksha comes, the eyes. Or Chakshudan Dilo Jai, Janme Janme Prabhu say, he says, he's my Lord, birth after birth, right? Janme Janme Prabhu say, why is he my Lord, birth after birth? Because he's given Chakshudan. Dan means donation. Chakshudan Dilo Jai, one who has given me the donation of eyes. He's my Lord, birth after birth. That's why we see my spiritual master is my Lord, birth after birth, because he's given me the donation of eyes. And what kind of eyes? Not like the physical eyes, but the ability to see through the ears. So Shrutek Shita Pata is this process is the process of hearing. And that's why in the Bhagavatam it says that Srinmatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shavana Kirtana, that by the process of hearing, the Supreme Lord in the heart, he takes a broom and he starts cleaning the heart. The one who has developed this desire to hear, Krishna becomes so eager to help that person, he takes a broom and starts sweeping the heart and cleanses the heart. And that's why the process of hearing one becomes really purified. And for such a devotee whose heart is cleansed, the Lord is curious to taste the sweetness of that devotee's heart. And he wants to see, let me taste the sweetness and let me personally come and reside. That's why in the pure devotee's heart, the Lord is always residing in the heart. Of course, you might see the super soul is there, but that's a plenary expansion. But Krishna himself comes and resides in the heart. He doesn't want to leave the heart of such a person because he wants to taste the sweetness. What is the sweetness of this person? So why are we talking about all of this? This verse is talking about the pastimes of the Lord, that the Lord performed pastimes with his associates, lifting the Govardhan hill and so on, right? So these pastimes when Krishna performed were actually seen by only a few. When Krishna was personally there, right? There were only a few people saw those pastimes. But then they're heard by the whole humanity. Not only that time, but generations to come, as we hear. Again, talking about the generations and generations that are described. They've all heard. So again, that's the importance of hearing. Only few people can see this Krishna's pastimes, but everybody can hear those pastimes. So again, more important than seeing is hearing. So the best way to see these Krishna's pastimes is to hear Krishna's pastimes. And even seeing, what good is seeing? Right? Krishna performed his pastimes. Many saw, but what could they understand? What could, like Duryodhana saw Krishna's universal form. What could he understand? He thought, okay, it's just, he said, yeah, you were good, but you're just a little better than me. He couldn't completely understand Krishna as God, the supreme personality of Godhead. He thought this is just a magician. Yeah, he was, okay, fine. He was good. Little better than me, but if I practice, maybe I can do that also. So Duryodhana saw the form. So what good is our seeing? So the best way to see, again, we keep discussing, is the best way to see is to hear. But again, even with seeing, there's a process of seeing. How can we see? Like Brahma Samhita says, right? Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanina. Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. Santa Sadaiva, like the Supreme Lord is eternally residing in the heart of a devotee. Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. Loka is like the abode. Vilokayanti is like residing. The Supreme Lord is eternally residing in the heart of whom? The one whose eyes are decorated with the salve, the ointment of love. Like sometimes you put mascara, or like in India, you put kajal, right? When it's really hot, you put like a ointment, which cools your eyes so they can see properly. So that's kajal. So here, Lord Brahma is saying that one who decorates their eyes with the ointment of love, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanina, Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. The Supreme Lord is always residing in the heart, and such a person is seeing from their eyes. They can personally see the pastimes of the Lord in their own heart. And it's not, but this seeing is not a metaphorical seeing. They're actually seeing. Krishna gives a spurti, or like a flash, or like a glimpse. They can see by the process of meditation. With their own eyes, they can see the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So in this way, such a devotee is always seeing the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And again, what's the best way to develop this process of seeing is, this process of seeing happens by hearing, and not just hearing. How do you hear? Any thoughts? Like what kind of a hearing should that be? And again, I said, feel free to unmute at any point of this discussion. This is not a monologue. Yes.
Submissive.
Huh?
Submissive.
Oh yeah, that's great. From Bhagavatam it says, right? Pranipat, Pariprashna, and Seva. So submission is one of those three. Any other thoughts? How do we hear?
Like attentively?
Yeah, that's great. Attentively. That's perfect. You hear with attention. But also the Bhagavatam says, like Satam Prasango Mama Virya Samvido. So, like Satam Prasango, the best way to hear is to hear from bona fide association, bona fide devotees, and in the association of devotees. Not just any sound vibration. Can any sound vibration take us to, like they say, Yato mat tato pat, all the roads lead to Rome, or whatever that saying is, like all paths lead to Krishna. It doesn't matter. You can hear anything. Everything is divine. No, one has to hear from bona fide devotees. Satam prasango mama virya samido. So Krishna is saying that when one hears in the association of devotees, prasango, if you see prasanga, sangha. So when you hear in the association of satam is like pure devotees, mama virya samido, then bhavanti hritkarna. Then what happens when you hear in the association of pure devotees? Then that hearing, bhavanti, becomes bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha. That hearing becomes a rasayana katha for the ears and the heart. It becomes nectar. That is so that hearing, when you hear in the association of pure devotees, is just like a life-giving nectar for the ears and the heart. And then what happens when you get that life-giving nectar, which you're drinking through the ears and storing in your heart? And then that nectar, that life-giving nectar, then becomes tajoshva apavar bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha tajoshva apavar vatma. Anyway, I forget that. When you hear that, that becomes it becomes a life-giving nectar, and then Shraddha Rati Bhakti Anukramishati. Yeah, so that verse is that Joshua Pavarmani Vatmani, that one then starts embarking on the path of liberation. That hearing, which becomes nectar for the ears and heart, one then starts the journey of the path of liberation. And then what happens when you take that path of liberation? Then Shraddha Rati Bhakti Anukramishati. Then once Shraddha, faith, Rati, attraction, and then Bhakti all increase. And not just in a random fashion, but anukramishati, in a sequential way. Shraddha, Bhakti, Ratir, Bhakti. So first comes Shraddha, and then comes like the verse Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Adav Shraddha Tato Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriya, that he gives a sequence of progression, how by having faith, a devotee progresses through different stages of their life, his or her life, devotional life, starting with Shraddha, having faith, and then one associates with Sadhu Sangha, like we discussed, Satam Prasanga. And then by Sadhu Sangha comes Bhajana Kriya, one starts engaging in practices, and from Bhajana Kriya, there comes Anartha Nivriti, or purification of the heart. So this way, one keeps advancing, and then these pastimes that we're talking in this verse, then we can personally see with our own eyes. With our own eyes, we can see these pastimes. And again, it's not metaphorical. We can see with our eyes. And Krishna says that is a test of a religion. Pratyaksha Vagvam Dharmyam Susukam Shant. Like that process by which you can personally see with your own eyes. Prati Aksha Vagamam Dharmyam. Aksha, with your own eyes, and that is Raja Vidya Rajaguhyam. That is the supreme confidential truth, that which you can see from our eyes. So Krishna is saying, don't just take my word for it. You, by this process, you, like just like an expert author at the start of the book, they'll see by the end of the scores, you should be able to learn these topics. Like an expert author will describe, this is the goal. So Krishna says, by the end of this is the goal. If you are able to see this, then the process has worked for you. Pratyaksha Agumam Dharma, you should see my pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill and other pastimes. Like we hear in the Damodarastakam, right? Iti Drikshva Lilavir, Iti Drikshva Lilavir Damodar. What is that? Iti Drikshva Lilavir Damodar.
Iti Drishna Lilavir Ananda Kunde Swagosham Jantam Akyapajantam.
So iti Lilavir Ananda Kunde. So we're drowning in pools of ecstasy. Ananda Kunde. Kunda is like a pool. So by these pastimes, Krishna is drowning us in pools of ecstasy. Iti drikshva lila. Iti driksh swa lilavir. Driksh is like eyes. Iti driksh swa lilavir. Swa is his own pastimes. Swa lilavir ananda kunde. He's drowning us in pools of ecstasy by these pastimes. So that's why from this text onwards, so I'll just conclude in a few minutes and we'll leave some time for discussion. So why does Krishna perform these pastimes? Like in this verse we're discussing, he comes with his associates, Bhoja, Andaka, and different associates, and he performs his pastimes and his pleasing smiles and pleasing sidelong glances. And what is the purpose? To drown us in pools of ecstasy. iti swalilabir ananda kunde swagosham nimajantam akhyapayantam. So these pastimes, Krishna drowns us in pools of ecstasy. And one becomes so intoxicated, one loses oneself. And the idea is not just to see these pastimes. It's not that, okay, first it starts with hearing, and then by hearing we can see these pastimes. But that's not it. Do we just want to see these pastimes? No, we want to participate in these pastimes. We want to be involved. I don't want to just see. I also want to be participating in these pastimes. But the thing is, Prabhupada warns us, one should not think that one can simply jump into the Rasa Leela and think that we are like Sahajiya mindset, that we are now dancing with Krishna and Rasa Leela and participating in Krishna's pastime. Then what do? I want to participate in Krishna's pastime, but at the same time, we shouldn't be Sahajiya. So what do? What is the solution? Krishna wants us to participate in the pastimes, even in our conditioned neophyte state. So there's one way we can participate in Krishna's pastimes in our conditioned neophyte state. Any guesses of what that is? How can we participate in Krishna's pastimes?
To actively partake in Lord Chaitanya's movement?
Yes, Sankirtan. That's the, so to solve that problem, Krishna himself comes in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, okay, if you can participate in my Rasa Leela, that's no problem. I'll personally come in my merciful incarnation, along with my first expansion, Nityananda, and Nitai Paramakaruna, Pahudwijana, Nitai Gaura Chandra. These two merciful lords, Lord Nityananda and Mahaprabhu, personally descend so that we can, conditioned souls can participate in Lord Krishna's pastime. So the way you can participate in Krishna's pastime is a Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, Kali Yuga Dharma, Harinam Sankirtan. So when you participate in Sankirtan Dharma, you're actually participating in Krishna's pastimes. This Sankirtan Dharma, the Sankirtan Harinam Sankirtan is non-different from Krishna's pastimes. And it is said that when there's Sankirtan going on, Krishna personally descends. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally descends, and he's there whenever there's two or more devotees chanting Krishna's name. Mahaprabhu is there. You cannot see it, but he's there in front of you. He's dancing. Nityananda is dancing. They're dancing in ecstasy. You cannot see it, but he's there. Anytime you do Harinam Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya personally comes. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam, right? Krishna Varnam. Varna is syllable. Krishna Varna, meaning he's saying Krishna, Krishna. Like that prayer Prabhupada says, like Krishna, 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 hey. Like that Mahaprabhu is saying, Krishna, Krishna, he's dancing and he's intoxicated. So Krishna Varnam Tvis Akrishnam. His complexion is Akrishna, meaning he's not blackish, but he's Krishna himself. So be assured that it's Krishna himself who comes personally before you, and he's dancing and he's with his associates. Like in this verse, we're talking about Andaka, Boja, and Krishna is lifting the Govardhan hill. All those associates also come. Sangha Upanga Astra Parshadam. Mahaprabhu doesn't personally just alone come. He comes with his associates. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam, Sangha Upanga Astra Parshadam. Sangha is associate, Upanga, confidential servitors. Astra, his weapon. What is his weapon? He doesn't use his Sudarshan Chakra and kill the demons. His weapon is the Sankirtan. He'll kill you by the sweet Prema Dhvani. He'll kill you with the sweet words of the Sankirtan. Golokera Premadham Harinam Sankirtan. The sound manifestation is a direct descent. It descends directly from the spiritual abode. Golokera Premadham Harinam Sankirtan. So he'll kill you, the demoniac tendencies with this Harinam. Sangha Upanga Astra Parshadam, his associates. So this Harinam Sankirtan is actually non-different from Krishna's pastimes, and Krishna personally descends. And how do we know Krishna personally descends? Are we speculating here? How does Krishna personally descend? Krishna says, what is that verse? Nam tishtami vaikunte yoginam hriday Yeshuva tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti mad bhakta. Krishna says, oh Narada, I'm not in Vaikuntha or the heart of a mystic yogi as much as I am where Tatra Tishtami Narada Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta. I reside there where my devotees glorify and sing my names. Tatra, anyway, Tatra Tishtami Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta. Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta. When my devotees sing my glories, my names, I personally reside there. So Krishna is saying, so Mahaprabhu is personally present there where my devotees come, two or more devotees come and congregate, chant. So I'll conclude with this, that the whole goal of all of the process, the whole goal of Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam ends with this, the last verse of Bhagavatam ends with this, it says, Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam, that wherever the whole goal is, wherever the devotees chant the congregational names of Krishna, that destroys all sinful reactions. So Bhagavatam ends with this final verse, that the glories of Harinam Sankirtan. In case you're wondering, what is all of this leading us to? This leads us to Harinam Sankirtan. I'm sorry, I'm like a stuck record. All of my talks just end in this one thing. Harinam Sankirtan, book distribution, this is the ultimate goal. This is the left hand and right hand of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. Book distribution and Harinam Sankirtan. So please participate in Harinam Sankirtan as much as possible. Try to, if you cannot go out and chant the Lord's names, then you can go in the comfort of a temple, participate in kirtans, and our life will hopefully be successful by this participation. So we are now towards the end of 9th canto, and now we'll soon enter Krishna's pastimes in the 10th canto. So with this, we'll we'll open the floor for questions, comments, reflections. Reflection is something that you heard in this discussion. Comment, of course, as we know, is something you want to add to this discussion. So yeah, any thoughts, questions, or comments to our discussion?
Hare Krishna, Godruma, Prana, Das. I think so grateful for this class, and my takeaway from this is I really loved when you shared about how when we decorate our eyes with the salve of love, then we can properly see, that you were quoting from Shastra. That was a big takeaway for me, because how when you were talking about consciousness, that consciousness, if it's kind of held in that container of love, then we're seeing things differently. How in mundane life, people talk about having like beer goggles, for the people that drink, and how everything they see through the beer goggles looks very pretty. And so to me, obviously I haven't drunk in ages, but now I want to be like drunk with like the Krishna love goggles. I want to see everything through Krishna love goggles and kind of enjoy things that way. And then my addition to it, when you were sharing at the end, it made me think of pastimes that I've heard Prabhupada disciples share about how Prabhupada would often get asked, like, do you see God? And how, depending on whether the person was asking sincerely or not, he would answer. And when someone was asking sincerely, he would say, you're seeing God too. You see God through, the sunrise and the beautiful things and all these things. And then when they were asking in an arrogant way, he would say, no, you're in my way. Like you're blocking me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so appropriate, because a lot of times we don't see Krishna because we're in our own way, like we're in the way for that. So thank you so much, Haribo.
Sure, thank you. I like the point you reminded us of the salve of love, decorating our eyes, like Mahaprabhu says, right? Nayanam galadashtu dharaya, vadanam hridaya gira. Nayanam galadashtu dharaya, that my eyes are like tears of torrents of rain are pouring from my eyes. That's the best way to decorate our eyes. Like yesterday, Bhima Prabhu gave a wonderful talk, and his eyes was decorated with tears of love. But that's the best way, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochani. So once you decorate, instead of putting makeup, and of course, if you want to put makeup, that's fine. But in addition, put also the makeup of the ointment or the salve of love. Any other comments or questions, realizations? Maybe I can read the comments. Someone says iPhone, great. Okay. And then Athena says, thank you so much. Really wonderful class. So many nuggets throughout. What really stuck with me is that we see through our consciousness. So very true. I'm going to let that sink in. Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating. Like we said, that we only see what's in our consciousness, not so much as what's in front of our eyes. That's why two people can be in the same situation. They can be having a completely different experience. I don't know if you've had that. One person is having a best time of their life, another person is miserable. The situation is the same. What they're seeing is the same, but they're having a completely different experience, although their eyes are showing them the same thing. So we see through our consciousness, not through our eyes. Thank you for that reflection. Any other thoughts?
Just a quick thought. We also seen through the consciousness of who we're hearing from and what we're watching. We're letting that stuff in. It's like food. You don't want any rotten food or some low quality food, expired food into our digestive system. So in the same way, when we see something silly on YouTube, I don't know, then but that's like food, like eating rotten food. Eating the consciousness of whoever created that content.
Yeah. Like who we hear from is also so important. That verse from we recited, the Shutekshita Pato. In the purport of that verse, Prabhupada says Shutekshita Pata means one should hear from bona fide devotees. So he emphasizes that in the purport of that verse of Shutekshita Pata, that one should hear. Hearing doesn't simply mean hearing, like you said, like hearing from news channels or things like that, but hearing from bona fide sources. The quality of our hearing also determines our quality for seeing. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Godruma Prabhu.
Any other final thoughts before we?
Yeah, I have a question. So some of us aren't, I guess, or many of us aren't in a circle of just surrounded by devotees where all we hear is transcendental sounds. We go to work and we have to deal and hear with many people's gossip around us and things like this. Maybe our manager calls us into the office, and while we're waiting for them to speak to us, we're hearing this whole story about criticizing this and criticizing that. So how do we defend ourselves from these things affecting our consciousness? What is a way to protect ourselves?
So is your question only in terms of hearing, or you're just saying association in general? Like when you associate with people at work, or you're talking with hearing specifically? Hearing
any kinds of topics that are going to affect our consciousness in a way that's going to give us a different lens to see through.
I mean, one thing is conscious hearing of our own volition, when we consciously decide to sort of listen to news channels or things like that. Sometimes here in New York City, sometimes a fight breaks out on the street and two people are yelling and screaming at each other. Now you have an option to sort of walk away. So first is we have as much as possible, we can choose to hear positive sound vibration. So that itself eliminates a good chunk when we consciously avoid material sound vibration. But then the other scenario you're saying, sometimes you're put in these situations where at work, someone is talking about such and such a thing. So what really makes an effect on our consciousness is the association we have. And when I say association, is not like association as in friends, but association as in a relationship. Karna guna sangasya sada sadyoni janmashu. Krishna is saying that our suffering or enjoyment is because karna guna sangasya. Sangha is we have this affinity or this relationship. So as soon as we start developing this relationship to what we're hearing or start imbibing it, then that starts affecting our consciousness. So that's why we have a sadhana, right? We have an early morning sadhana and we go out about our daily life. So when we have a good sadhana, then we don't form that relationship with what we hear. We simply just, even if it comes in, it's, like we hear, as cliche as it sounds, like hearing and listening, right? You can hear something and you can listen to something. So when you have a good internal disposition, it just simply remains as hearing. But you use your listening only for spiritual topics. So for material things, you just hear and you don't bother too much by that. But for spiritual things, you actually listen. And there's a process of how one goes about listening. There's Shravanam. Well, there's different steps. There's Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasan. Shravanam is when you listen, and Mananam is when you contemplate. And there's different steps, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasan, and different steps, and each step you go deeper and deeper into what you hear. So when our internal disposition is strong, then it doesn't affect what we hear. And of course, we should try our best to remove ourselves from that situation. Even at work, your coworker or someone, they're talking about something negative. I mean, as much as possible, if you can get up and leave or try to change the subject or whatever you can. And of course, Krishna is there to help us. If you're sincere, the main thing is if you're sincere, if you're stuck in those situations, Krishna will help us and he'll guide us. whatever that it takes, and Krishna will help us. But the important thing is, from our side, we have this desire, this sincerity to only listen to positive sound vibration and not consciously desire to listen to negative sound vibration, and Krishna will help us. So maybe is that okay? I know we're going over time, and so I don't want to go on and on, but I hope that's okay.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Thank you. So Ananda Bihari Prabhu.
Yeah, Krishna will get us fired. Krishna will kill us. And I was just thinking, I haven't heard even once, even from one devotee, that Krishna hasn't, that there was a situation where Krishna hasn't fulfilled their sincere prayer and desire.
Yeah.
If we ask for it, Krishna will be there for us.
Once Yashoda Dulal Prabhu was mentioning that if you desire something sincerely which helps for our spiritual life, actually Sachinandanta Swami mentioned to him that Krishna will move heaven and earth to sort of facilitate your spiritual life if you're sincere in our spiritual desires. If you really want to.
Krishna can deal with the karmic manager easily. Okay, thank you everyone. Godruma Prabhu, wonderful class, very practical, relatable. We can all go to our managers and cover our ears and just go, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, and get fired happily. Right? Yeah. Okay, Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai, Godruma Prabhu, Ki Jai.